And we are live. We are live with today's 2/20/11/01 Core 1 study group. This is our pre-show. And for the next 10 minutes, because we start at the top of the hour, the next 10 minutes, we will be checking things here, making sure the cameras look good, making sure the lighting is right, making sure the recordings are working, those types of things. This is the part where we sort of make sure everyone's here. Plus, we get to say hi to everyone in the chat room. Hello, chat room. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Please find a place to settle in and have a seat and relax. We will be getting things going here in just a moment. Trying to figure out the best place for my microphone, and I'm not sure I know what that best place is. We're going to put it there for now. I'm going to try not to touch this constantly today. Hope everybody's doing well. Thank you for joining us. We're now into the year. We're now like in the mode. In January, we're sort of starting the new year, trying to get things going. Now it's just normal. Now we're just in it. Now we are making it happen. And it's very busy on this side. We got a lot of projects going on this side. We're trying to make things happen. It's all good. Hello, Mal. Good to see you in the chat room. Thanks for being here. Hope things are good down in St. Vincent. We are in short sleeves and shorts today. It's very nice here in Florida. Folks checking in from Minneapolis say it's 0 degrees, I'm assuming, Fahrenheit. That's slightly cold. That's a little bit chilly outside. But at least we're enjoying things here in Florida because it's so nice right now. What's the temperature right now? Let's find out, everybody. I really need like a lower third for the weather. 78 degrees is what it is right now. I am so sorry. I didn't mean to laugh when I said that. It's just one of those things. We just love it. It's just so nice. So that's pretty good. It's a normal winter here in Florida. Let's go ahead and put up the lower third here that shows you where you can join us to answer these questions live and to answer the question of where you might be joining from. That is this one right here, where you could put your virtual pin in our map to find out where you and others are joining in from if you are here indeed live. Figure all of this out. Oh, the studio is sort of in the mode of shooting video right now because we are in the middle of finishing up our newer A+ course. We'll probably talk a little bit about that in the after show. We can certainly do that. But the studio, normally I have to do a lot of conversions when I switch over from what I do normally and then what I'm doing on the live stream. Today, it was already set up. It was already ready to go because all we're doing today, I'm walking in the studio every day and we're just shooting video and shooting video and shooting video and shooting video. So it's just, we're in that churn right now, which is a lot of fun. It's good to, it's finally good after you've spent so much time writing and building and going through new content and updating things. And then you get in the studio and you get to shoot it. You get to create the content. It takes a lot just to get to that point of creating it. And then I get to edit, and we're throwing a few new things in with the edits this time. We're trying some different things. We're always trying different things. We're always updating. So I'm really happy to see it. Plus, we're on all new equipment right now. We talked about that in December, that we have all new equipment for our streaming. We have all new equipment for our audio. No, the audio's fine. All new equipment for the audio. It's always a concern whenever you're trying to change things with your production chain. You're changing the chain, and it makes me very nervous. I have to do a lot of testing prior to doing it so that we can really be comfortable. But we've done now, I think all the live streams in all the live streams in January were on the new system. And we did find a few things that needed to be tweaked and fixed. And in fact, if you go back and look at the live stream we did for Security Plus at the end of January, I feel like the synchronization of the mouth to the video, the audio and the video was not well synchronized. And it was okay. In fact, if I had not mentioned it, you probably wouldn't have even noticed unless you were that kind of person, which I am. But now we've sort of tweaked that. There's some great settings in our software that allow us to to change the audio delay so that it matches the video, because video takes longer to process than audio does. So very commonly, video that is produced, if you produce it all at the same time, the audio is faster than what you see on the screen. So you end up hearing it before you see it, and then nothing is in sync really. But now it's completely in sync. I did a lot of testing and got the clapper out, and we just went ahead and made sure that the video that when I came down and made a noise, it really did sync up to the timelines, readjusted them. So hopefully, let's try it out right now, shall we? So hopefully today, when I talk to you, it will be in synchronization and we'll be able to make all of that happen. So we'll see. I've never really done a walkthrough video. I have not. We really should consider doing one of those, and I just haven't. Haven't done one. If you go, you can look at a list of the things that are in our studio. If you go to professormesser.com/studio, or you choose the studio link from the main page, there is a breakdown of the different devices, components, the new mixer that I'm using, which is very colorful, by the way. Look at that colorful mixer. Had to get out of the way. Look at the pretty colors, which I don't know that I'm in love with, but it does serve a purpose. Because you really can link everything up to where it should be on this. All right, we got about 3 minutes and 15 seconds before we get started here. Yes, this is not the live stream. Well, I mean, it is the live stream, but it's not our actual event. I have prepared for you all new questions. I have prepared for you a complete overview. And then, of course, in the last hour, you can submit your questions. Anyway, cable management is really good. That was a big deal with the studio. I've got a lot of cable holders underneath that I installed at the far end of the desk. And they're 19-inch racks on the left and right. You really can't see them very well in that shot. There's 19-inch racks on the left and the right. And there are things that need to talk to each other between those, and they all follow those cable channels. And it works great. Keeps everything out of the way. There's nothing on the floor. I am very particular about that. That goes back to my network days, I think. Because if you fix the infrastructure so that the physical plant is in good shape, then you don't have to worry so much about that. It sort of solves a lot of problems with cables being crimped and shorts and a lot of issues tracking things back. I've got a very nice way to track. Maybe I'll find that image. It's in our early on in our Instagram. I have one of the cable markers that I use to put on the cables so that I know where everything is. Oh, when is the next Network Plus live stream? It's always on the calendar. You can go to professormesser.com/calendar. It'll be Wednesday of next week, a week and a day from today. Yes. It is a cool mouse. The Hippus hand shoe. I'm using the wired version right now, which is a relatively old engineered version. In fact, that is a micro B USB connector on it. That's how old the engineering is on it. I say that's like it's ancient. It's like 3 years old, 4 years old. But they have a new wireless that works Bluetooth. I can just get rid of the wires, but then I'd have to deal with batteries. And I really like this one, and it's working great. It's one of those things where I'll just wait for it to break, and then I'll get the new one. I think that's what's going to happen. My keyboard is getting close to that. You probably can't see it from where you are. But the keys themselves, let's see if we can do, nope, that's not me. The keys themselves are, they're getting a little worn. You can't even see some of them. They're just not there. They have gone missing. They have just been worn away. So unfortunately that does happen. I go through keyboards pretty quick. So that's just how it goes. Well, that's kind of a slow delay, isn't it? I gotta work on that too. That is a K860, the Logitech K860. Again, at professormesser.com/studio. Professormesser.com/studio. We got 15 seconds. I should probably get my act in order. Here, we'll put a phone over there. This is ready to go. That is ready to go. Why don't we open up our keynote? Let's see if we get a green light on the keynote. Since you're looking over my shoulder. Green light. Love the green light. There we go. We're playing. That all looks good. I think we're in good shape. I think it's time to get started, everybody. Let's bring up the graphic which do they still have it over here? I think we do. We'll get rid of this one and we'll bring this one in and we'll do a live stream. Here we go, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the January 2025 Professor Messer 220-1101 Core 1 A+ study group. We have a great study group prepared for you today. This is the study group where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. And you, if you are here in real time and live, can answer those questions online with us. We're looking forward to getting things started today. We've got a lot of great things to go through. Oh, and now, of course, that we've started the live stream, we just had a big preview in the live stream about here's what's going on with the live stream. Here's what we need to check in the pre-show. And of course, I'm already noticing there are things that I should have changed in the pre-show, like this amazing this third level 3, whatever is going on there. There's an odd thing happening there, isn't it? And I think we might just change things around before we even get started too much on this. That's one of the challenges when doing a live event, by the way. You check everything, you get everything going, you put it all in place, and then when you're ready to make it happen, it doesn't work the way you were expecting, which is just sort of normal. So we're gonna see how this works for the time being. I might switch a few things around. We're working with this in a bit. If you are here live, we would love for you to join us live. The way that you can make that happen is to follow the link that you see on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA, and you can answer questions along with us, which is a lot of fun. We've got a lot of great questions for you today. Of course, they're all new questions. That's something I like to do every time we do one of these live streams. And the question I have for you first, though, is not a new one. It's one that I put in here so that we can see if that link is really working properly. So let's try it out, shall we? That link says, when powering on, a desktop computer requires a password before password before the operating system will start. Which of the following would be the best way to clear this prompt? Now, as many of you know, our process for answering questions during the live stream is to answer the question using the link on your screen. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You want to follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in this link. So let's see what our options are. The question again asks, when powering on, a desktop computer requires a password before the operating system will start. Which of the following would be the best way to clear this prompt? Would it be remove the motherboard battery, reinstall the OS, replace the storage drive, short a jumper, or restart while holding down the shift key? It's got to be one of these. Now, we are going to come back to this question in just a bit. You've already seen this question before because you're very familiar with this. The way that you answer the question is you use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to be able to answer the question. We'll see how we do with that. Well, we've got a lot to go through today. I think when we were working on the study group and getting things started and trying to make sure we had all this, I wanted to make some links available so that you could find us wherever we happen to be. Obviously, our entire A+ course is available for you to watch on YouTube for free. No registrations required. There's nothing behind a paywall. We don't leave anything out. You can go to professormesser.com/YouTube to see that. And if you'd like, you could even subscribe to the channel. I'm just throwing that out. It does help us quite a bit. So thank you for that. We also have daily A+ pop quiz questions. You can find them at professormesser.com/Twitter or professormesser.com/Instagram. I'll also let you know that sometime in this first hour, I will be giving you a prompt of some kind, a continuing education unit prompt. This is a prompt that will allow you to earn a 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. We'll talk more about this in a moment. If you don't know what this is, you've never heard of this, then it probably doesn't apply to you. But we'll talk more about it when we get to that point sometime in this first hour. So have a listen in sometime in that first hour and we shall discuss it. So as we are going through this and dealing with this idea of the A+, what is this A+ certification? What is this exam that we are working on? This is an exam, the 1101, the 220-1101, and the 220-1102, which we often call the Core 1 and the Core 2. These are 2 exams that were released in April the 20th of 2022. Our estimated retirement date for these exams are around the October timeframe of this year. It might be a bit earlier, it might be a bit later. We don't know yet because CompTIA has not provided us with any updates on when things might be changing. We don't know. So, but as we sit here now, we're in February, you have plenty of time to take this exam, finish your studies, become certified. You'll become certified well before this exam is ever set for retirement in the October timeframe. So don't worry so much about timeframes right now. You are studying exactly the right information for the perfect version of this exam, because quite honestly, that's the only version that's available right now. The exam requirements themselves have us at 90 minutes per exam. For the 220-1101, which is the one we will be talking about today, you need a 675 on a scale from 100 to 900. If you take the Core 2 exam, you have to do a little bit better. You have to get a 700. And when you pass your second exam, when both of these exams are indeed locked in, then one of the nice parts about that is the exam itself is good for 3 years. Your certification itself, good for 3 years. So even though they might be updating exam versions sometime this year, they might be retiring exam versions at the end of the year. Quite honestly, it doesn't matter, because your certification, once you pass that second exam, is good for 3 years. You're locked in. I like to tell people, once you're certified, it really doesn't matter what they do to the exams, because you will be fine. You're already locked in and got everything ready to go. So that's an important consideration for those of you working on this. Also let you know that if you are working on your A+ certification, there are 2 different exams and different topics in each exam. So if you were to look at that, you would notice that, for example, let me give you an example of this. Here we go. The 220-1101 is an exam, like I said, is the Core 1. It covers mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization, and cloud computing. And you've also got hardware and network troubleshooting in that. So all of the topics we're going to talk about today come from those categories. You're welcome to come back in a couple of days. If you're here live, come on back on Thursday, and we're going to talk about operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. We'll break those up into 2 different sets. Also let you know that eventually, once we are done here, I will post an audio-only version of this in a podcast form. So if you have a podcast listening program that you like to listen to, this is what you can use. It's this podcast link at professormesser.com/podcast, or simply search for Professor Messer in your favorite podcast index or website. And if you're on a streaming media service, you can always check on that streaming media service. For example, if you're on Spotify, simply search for Professor Messer. You'll find us there as well. If you'd like to join the podcast and have it added to your podcast listening program, the link is professormesser.com/podcast. Also let you know that the YouTube video description that you will see on this video, which is available immediately afterwards, will be updated in the next 24 hours or so to show timestamps of everything we do today. That way you're able to find things very, very quickly. This does not happen automatically. This takes a little bit of work to make those things happen. So I would send my thanks right now to my marketing manager, Lori, who's watching this replay. Thank you, Lori. She's going through this entire process and putting in all of those timestamps, and has been for years. Help you find exactly what you're looking for as quickly as possible. Have a look at those. They're over at professormesser.com/YouTube. And again, you might want to subscribe to our channel so you're always updated on the latest videos. Of course, there will be new A+ videos this year, and if you're not subscribed, you'll never know. So that might be a good idea to go ahead and subscribe and click that bell so you're informed every time I post a new A+ video. Also, there is a Discord that we are in, of course, because I can't be live on video all day. And when I'm stopping this in a couple of hours, we'll be over on our Discord. You should join us at professormesser.com/Discord. There are thousands of students there planning for their A+, their Network Plus, their Security Plus, and so much more. It's also a great community of folks. They're all very welcoming. You can ask any question you'd like, and people are so easy and eager to help. It's really so nice to have such a good group of folks there that are working on that. We'd love to have you join them. ProfessorMesser.com/Discord. Eventually, you will need to take your A+ exam, and you could go to the CompTIA website and pay full price for that exam. But why would you do that? That doesn't make sense. You should pay less. You should pay a little bit less. Let's give you a bit of a discount. If you're in the U.S., Canada, or the U.S. territories, then you can get a discounted voucher from our site, which is the same voucher they have over at the CompTIA website, except it's one that costs less. That sounds like a deal to me. Now, not only that, I'll give you even more of a deal on top of that. I have a book you cannot buy. You can only get this book if you purchase a voucher or if you purchase one of my success bundles. It is my Exam Hacks ebook. This is an ebook I wrote of some tips and tricks that I use during the study process and tips and tricks and strategies that I use during the exam itself to help me get a few extra points. So this might help you get a few extra points too. Have a look at what's there on our voucher page. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. That can be a very good use of your money, and maybe you get a little bit of extra from that as well. Let's go back to that question we asked earlier. When powering on, a desktop computer requires a password before the operating system will start. Which of the following would be the best way to clear this prompt? Would it be to remove the motherboard battery, reinstall the operating system, replace the storage drive, short a jumper, or restart while holding down the shift key? Well, let's see what you think the answer was. We will stop our poll, and we can see that 45% of you say short a jumper. That's a pretty good number. But also pretty good numbers. 21% say remove the motherboard battery. 20% say restart while holding the shift key. 12% said reinstall the OS, and 2% said replace the storage drive. These numbers look really familiar. They look almost exactly what we had last month. So let's talk about clearing a password. This is obviously a pretty important thing to do on a system. This is a significant security event. You don't want people to be able to do this normally. You don't want people to be able to clear your boot passwords on your systems just by asking for it, just by hoping that it works. There needs to be some process that is difficult to do, but not so difficult that you couldn't do it if you needed to. So if you are someone who is working with a BIOS password, and that's what this is, if you read that description there, you're powering on and your desktop computer requires a password. That's a BIOS password. So one of the things that you can do when clearing a BIOS password is you can go in and have a look at the configuration. You need to clear the config on this password. One of the challenges with this is that the information that we are storing this configuration in is flash memory. Same type of memory we have on our USB sticks. And as many of you know, you can plug in a USB stick, you can copy information to it, you can remove the USB stick, and you can take the USB stick somewhere else. There's no power in the USB stick, but it's a type of memory that is electronically erasable, and it is a type of memory that is permanent. It stays there until you decide to clear it. Well, that creates a bit of a problem if you're trying to clear a password. So there is a special process on most system boards, most pieces of hardware, where you will need to short a jumper. You need to connect 2 pins on that motherboard and restart your system. If you've never seen this jumper, this is what it looks like. There is a jumper. These are these 3 pins that are on your motherboard, 1, 2, and 3. These 2 pins right here normally don't touch each other, but you put this little plastic short on top of it, this little jumper on top of it, and notice that it has a little copper piece that goes right across the top, effectively connecting those 2 wires together. Now, some of you that are sort of old school, you know that you can get a flat screwdriver and just touch both of those while you boot up, but that is probably not your best solution. That's not a good best practice, if you will. But those of you that have jump-started a car before, you understand the process. That's what you would use, is that short of a jumper to be able to make that happen. So that is the answer we were looking for. Short the jumper. 45% of you chose that one. You'd be absolutely right. Because it is flash memory, removing the motherboard battery, because there is a battery on the motherboard, but all that battery really does these days is keep your time and date. That's all it really does, so that you don't have to put in the time and date every time you plug the machine in and turn it on. That does not erase the configuration. Just like removing your USB drive from your computer doesn't clear everything on your USB drive, removing the motherboard battery does not clear everything that's in the flash where the configuration settings are. So that's a pretty important one to consider. That used to work. That used to be that way 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Doesn't work that way anymore. Won't work that way. So removing the battery is not going to help you very much. All it will do is now prompt you for a username and password. And that's not what we were trying to do. And 20% of you said restart while holding the shift key. That bypasses your startup applications in Windows. So here we're assuming it's a machine with Windows. It might not be. And in this particular case, holding down the shift key won't bypass a password. That would be the easiest hack ever. If we could just simply hold down the shift key, no password. Maybe we should try that. Maybe we should see if we can get that to work on a system. I don't think it will. So that's not going to be the one we can choose either. 12% said reinstall the operating system. It's not even booting to an operating system. We're not even there yet. So that's not going to help us at all. And then finally, replacing the storage drive, kind of a very harsh type of response. And only 2% of you chose that one. And replacing the storage drive is not where the password is. So that's not going to help you either. The password is on the motherboard. The only way to clear that password on the motherboard is to short the jumper. That's what you want to do, is use that. So there is your answer. Hopefully you remembered that one from our talks last week. That is now everybody I see. You can get in, you can answer questions. Everything seems to be working properly. So now let's do a new question. New question I have for you is a question that is a performance-based question. As many of you know, our first new question of every study group is not a multiple choice question. And some of you that have not taken this exam before may not even realize that the exam itself starts with a group of questions that are not multiple choice. Well, if they're not multiple choice, what are they? Well, they're anything that CompTIA wants them to be. They can be any type of format they want to put together. Globally, overall, as a group, CompTIA calls these performance-based questions. You may see them abbreviated as PBQs, the performance-based questions. And you might get a handful of these when you start. Some people get a large number. Some people get like 7 of them when they start the exam. It just depends on the roll of the dice. That random number generator is going to decide how many performance-based questions you get. So what's a performance-based question? It's a question that is just not multiple choice. It could be fill in the blank. It could be a matching question. It could be a drag and drop question. I think last month we did one where I put you at a command prompt and I said, here's a problem, solve it. And you have to know what to type in. They can be pretty demanding. But one good part about them is they are asking you about information that is already contained in your CompTIA exam objectives. They're not asking you for something you don't know about. And I think a lot of people get worried that these questions are going to be something they can't answer. But the reality is you already know what they're going to ask. They're just not going to put it in the format of a multiple choice question, which makes it very easy to refer back to the things you know to be able to apply some of the things you have learned. So I have for you exactly that scenario. I have put together a performance-based question that this month is a matching question. And here is the question that asks, match the connector. Now I have for you 5 different scenarios. So I'm not giving you the name of the connector, nor do I even at this point care if you know the name of the connector. That's not what this question is asking. This question is asking you to match the connector, and I put on the screen a number of different scenarios. So the first one is connect a switch to a DSL modem. Which of these connectors would I use? And I had so many connectors that I had to put them all on the screen. The connectors are A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So there's all your connectors that you need to choose from. I'm not telling you what those connectors are, nor am I interested in you telling me what the connectors are. I just need to know which one of these you want to use with these connectors. So the second one is set up a new laptop to a conference room video display. Which one of these would you use? Connect an internal hard drive. Connect the internal hard drive data on a desktop computer. I'm not sure I really wrote that the way I wanted it to turn out. Connect the internal hard drive data on a desktop computer. Really, I guess that is what I wanted you to tell me, because there is a difference between hard drive data connections and other types of connections. Number 4 is connect a network between buildings 1 kilometer apart. And the last one is connect the internet provider network to the cable modem. Now, if you know these answers, I guess I should open the poll on your side so you can choose or type in what you think they are. If you already think they're in order, simply put 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, 5E, and you're done. Now, you'll notice that there will be 2 left over because I have 5 different scenarios for you to figure out, but I have 7 different pictures. So there will be some left over when you are done. 2 of these will be left over when you are finished. So see if you know what the answer is. Of course, our rule in the chat room, as always, is please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Use the link that is on your screen. Do I have a link? I really don't. Don't have that link there. Let's see if I could just bring it up and not cause a big problem there. It's kind of a problem. Go to professormesser.com/QA. I ran out of so much real estate on this one that it was a little bit of a challenge to find enough room to even put the link down for you to answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA. See if you know what this answer is. We can always go through the list and figure out the details. If you have ever worked with connectors, I always like going through big data centers, and I don't like to go around the front of these different systems that are in the data center. I want to go to the back of the systems because I want to see all the connections. I want to see what these are, how these are really connected. Looking at the front of a computer is not very useful, but looking at the back really tells you a lot about what it's doing. As always, of course, there's your link. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. This is where you would like to go to make all of these work. This should be pretty good. Go to professormesser.com/QA if you think you know what this answer happens to be. This might be a good one to have a look at. By the way, all 7 of those connectors, even though they will not be part of this answer, you still need to know all 70 of these connectors for your exam. So make sure you are aware of them. See if you know what the answer is. professormesser.com/QA. Go to that link and you can lock in your answer. See if you happen to know what these are. This should be pretty good. And if you are on this system and working through the details of what these particular components are, then you should do pretty good. You should be very familiar with them and know how you might work with them. So hopefully you're good with this. Again, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Just go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See how you do with this. I think this is one a lot of people will do well on. So we will fit a lot of people in the chat room going, what connector is that one? Don't worry. We will get to it. You will be able to see it in just a moment. We will go through the entire setup and determine what all of these happen to be. So it should be a good test of your reading skills and your visual skills. For those of you listening on the podcast, I apologize now because you obviously can't see this on the podcast side. Let's see how you did with this one. Let's match these connectors together to see what we think these answers are. So let's go through the entire breakdown of what these might be. Let's start with the very first one. We want to connect a switch to a DSL modem. Want to connect a switch to a DSL modem. So what type of connection would we use between a network switch and really any type of modem? I said DSL modem really just to throw you off, but it could be any type of modem that we might be using in the world of cable modems, DSL modems, or any other device. Well, that's an Ethernet connection. And for those of you familiar with what you would use, or the best choice of all of these, because really 2 of them technically could be used, but really we're looking at the best possible answer, especially since, as you see, we're going to use one of those also in another answer. We would choose answer F. It would be your Ethernet connector is what you would use. It's that RJ45 connector right here. That's what plugs in between your modem and your switch, or really anything in your switch. That's kind of how things work on these switches, is that most of the switches we're using will be RJ45, but of course, Ethernet has a lot of different physical connection types. That is one of the most common you will find. Next on our list is set up a new laptop to a conference room video display. Well, we need to look at all of these connectors and determine is one of them a video connector? Is more than one of them a video connector? Could we use a different type of connection? I have video connections in my studio that use RJ45, but those are very uncommon. A much more common video connection is this HDMI connector right there. Connector E is HDMI. That's the one we would choose for this. That's the one that you would set up to be able to connect to a conference room display. It's probably the most common video type connection today that we would use. Third on our list is connect internal hard drive data on a desktop computer. This is an important thing to remember, is that when you're connecting up an external hard drive, you not only need a connection to get the data from that drive, often you also need power for the drive. And that was the differentiation I was making here. If we look through our list, again, there are multiple connectors here that could be used for data, but the one that makes the most sense is this SATA connector that we have in connection B. That is the SATA data connector. The SATA connection for power is actually a larger connector on the drive, but that is the one we would use, especially for an internal hard drive. I didn't use a SAS connector. I used SATA on this one, and that's one you should really be very familiar with. It's one of the most common connection types for your internal hard drives. Now let's look at number 4, which asks, connect a network between buildings 1 kilometer apart. There's not many types of network topologies that can support a link that goes a distance of 1 kilometer. Now, I did the math, and I believe that's 1,000 meters. If I go through the process, that's a lot of meters. That's certainly much more than the 100 meters that you would normally get through a copper connector like the one we use for Ethernet. Our connector F up here, the RJ45, will go 100 meters, but it will not go 1,000. It won't go 1 kilometer to that particular building across the campus. But you may notice here that connection G is a fiber connector, specifically the SC connector is what we would choose. And the SC connector is one that can go 1 kilometer, perhaps even more, depending on the topology and the signal type that you have running across that particular link. So that is what we would use. And last one on our list is number 5, connect the internet provider network to the cable modem. So we have a couple of clues here we have to think about. The first one, it's a cable modem. So we would take into account, all right, we know what a cable modem is used for, and it specifically asks you connect the internet provider network. Now, remember up here, connecting a switch to a DSL modem was RJ45. And if we were connecting the switch to the cable modem, it would also be an RJ45. But if you get into the details of the exam and working with the different connector types, the one that is an internet provider network on a network that is cable modem is going to be an F connector, which is the one you see in option C. That is the F connector. And of course, F, as we saw in a previous study group, the F in F connector, of course, stands for the letter F. It doesn't stand for anything. There are a number of connectors that were created by this company. They had an A connector, a B connector, a C connector, a D, you see where this is going, a D connector, an E connector, an F connector, and even connectors after that. And the only one that seemed to stick, the only one that got really embraced by the industry was the one that ended in the letter F. It was the F connector. And that's why that makes the most sense. So that means that we had 2 left over. We did not choose A. A is what we have colloquially called in the industry a Molex connector, which technically is the name of the company that makes the connector. And that company makes many different types of connectors, which makes it all the more unusual that we would just call it Molex. But that is the type of connector that's commonly used to power the systems and peripheral type systems inside of computers. So if you have fans, external drives, other types of systems that need to be powered inside of a computer, Molex may be used to provide that power. And then you've got others on this list that you could work through. You've got, which one did we not use? We used B, which is our SATA. We use C, the F connector. We did not choose D. D is a DB9, which technically is DE9. I look forward to your cards and letters. That is a D, we call it a DB9 connector because we had an older style connector that was 25 pins. We called it DB25. And then we got a smaller version of it that's only 9 pin, and we called it DB25. But it turns out that letter B really represents how big this connection is. So when it shrunk down, it was really the E size. So DE connector is what that technically is. You might see it in both ways. If you're purchasing a connector type like that, you may see it written both ways. Oh, this one's a DB9, but the other one's a DE9. What's the difference? There isn't one. We just, for some reason in this industry, decided to call the same thing two different words. That's not the first time that happened in the industry. It's not the only time it happened in the industry, and it certainly will not be the last time that it happens in this industry. So connecting the switch to a DSL modem would be an RJ45 connector. Setting up a new laptop to the conference room video display is an HDMI connector. Connecting internal hard drive data connections on a desktop computer is this data connector for SATA. Connecting a network between buildings 1 kilometer apart is an SC connector, or as we call the square connector. And then connecting the internet provider network to the cable modem is an F connector. That would be option C. The F connector is C. I didn't realize at the time that would be an issue, but that is that is option C, which is an F connector. Okay, that is our performance-based question of the day. This is knowing these different interfaces is important for your exam. So make sure you are familiar with those different options. For those of you wondering why connecting a switch to a DSL modem would not be RJ11, I would recommend you look at my video that talks about DSL switches, DSL modems, where we have both the RJ11 and the RJ45 on the back of those modems. I wanted you not to connect to the DSL modem network. I wanted you to connect to a switch. So that's why it's not RJ11. That's why it's RJ45. So there you go. There is your performance-based question of the month. Hopefully you got something out of that one. Maybe that would be something useful. Now let's switch back to a multiple choice question. It feels better already, doesn't it? Let's do this multiple choice question that asks, a company provides internet-facing services from a well-known cloud provider and also provides internal cloud apps in their own data center. Which of the following would best describe this deployment model? Would it be community, private, hybrid, public, or hypervisor? As always, of course, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You want to answer the question using this link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer for this one. And of course, I think many of you might know this one. I think this one we're going to bounce back from that 40-something% we got earlier. A company provides internet-facing services from a well-known cloud provider and also provides internal cloud apps in their own data center. Which of the following would best describe this deployment model? Would it be community, private, hybrid, public, or hypervisor? If you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See if you know what this one happens to be. A lot of people locking theirs in pretty quick. I try not to look at the answers because I can see a summary of the answers on my side if I wanted to look at that. I like it to be a surprise for me as well. But I always like to see how many people are answering and how quickly they answer, which I want to believe that there's a psychology there that I could determine, oh, everybody knows it or everybody doesn't know it. As it turns out, there's really no way to tell. I really can't ever seem to make a correlation there, but I try to every time. Lock in your answers. A lot of you getting your answers in there pretty quick. Let's see how you did on this one. A company provides internet-facing services from a well-known cloud provider and also provides internal cloud apps in their own data center. Which of the following would best describe this deployment model? Would it be community, private, hybrid, public, or hypervisor? Which one is it going to be? Let's see what you think the answer is. We'll stop our poll and see what you chose. And you can see that 77% say it is a hybrid deployment model. 10% of you say it's a private deployment model. And at that point, it drops down to single digits. Public is 6%, community is 4%, and a tie for last place with community is also hypervisor, also with 4%. If we go with the strong majority on this one, it is hybrid at 77%. Well, the key here is that we are looking at services that we are using. Some of the services are from a cloud provider external to us. So like an Amazon, for example, a Microsoft, a Rackspace, one of the big companies that provides cloud-based services. And we also have our own cloud in our own data center. We're effectively got the best of both worlds. And if you're working through the best of both worlds, you're using both a private local data center and you're using a public provider. You got both of them. That's a hybrid configuration. You're mixing both public and private in your infrastructure. And I would bet that most organizations, most large organizations that have their own data center are probably also using a public cloud provider. I would bet most are already hybrid. I just think that's sort of a natural type of implementation, is to have this hybrid configuration. Indeed, that's what you chose as well. It's the hybrid configuration. 77% of you chose that one. That is the one you should choose. And that does take the private and the public, which are right there next to it, combines them together into a hybrid configuration. Now, there was one other link on the screen I did not show, is that if many organizations get together and they create their own cloud and they share it amongst themselves, we refer to that as a community deployment model. Certainly not as common as a public, private, or hybrid model, but they do exist and they are out there, cloud-based equipment, and that capital outlay for the equipment can be expensive. So if you get a bunch of people together and pool it, you're sort of sharing all the resources amongst each other. It's a community configuration, and that's why it would not be the answer in this question. Only 4% of you chose community. If you are working with technology that helps drive virtual machines, you would be using a hypervisor. A hypervisor is not a deployment model for a cloud, however. So that is not the answer we were looking for. The one we wanted was the one that most of you chose, hybrid, and 77% of you chose that one. Let's do some troubleshooting, shall we? The next question on our list is a troubleshooting question, and it asks, a help desk ticket is reporting a case of port flapping. Which of the following would be a useful troubleshooting step? Would it be enable 802.1x, replace the patch cable, manually move to another wireless channel, change the IP address and subnet mask, or restart the computer? A help desk ticket is reporting a case of port flapping. Which of the following would be a useful troubleshooting step? Is it enable 802.1x, replace the patch cable, manually move to another wireless channel, change the IP address and subnet mask, or restart the computer? If you think you know the answer, please know answers in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See if you know what this one happens to be. This should be a good one for you troubleshooting folks. Want to know what should you do if somebody calls about that, and work through it. So that's it. So people are very confused about the difference between a DB25 and a DE9. So if the connector for VGA is that 15-pin connector and it's the same size as a serial connector, 9-pin serial, it's not a DB15. It's a DE15. The whole world is different now. Everything has changed. It's not the place you thought it was. Can you really trust anything anymore? That's where we are. If we can't get our connectors right, are we even sure any of this is real? This is where we are. That's my everyday, by the way. Every day I'm like that because I'm constantly reading new things. I'm constantly going through the breakdown of what all this stuff happens to be. I got back into reading some things about quantum physics. If you ever want to just second guess reality, that's what you should do. Go learn more about quantum physics. That's something that I just can't even figure out, and yet it works. In fact, nobody can really figure out, and yet it works. That's probably the weirdest part about it. Scientists look at it and go, we don't know. We just put this in here, and it comes out there. In the middle, not sure. Not sure. So don't worry so much about the DB15 versus the DE15, the DB9 versus the DE9. There's much bigger problems out there, I guess. Let's see. Speaking of bigger problems, let's segue into the answer. The answer for this question that asks, a help desk ticket is reporting a case of port flapping. Which of the following would be a useful troubleshooting step? Would it be enable 802.1x, replace the patch cable, manually move to another wireless channel, change the IP address and subnet mask, or restart the computer. Isn't the answer always restart the computer? In this case, no. I don't believe it is. Let's see what you think the answer is. 60% of you say replace the patch cable is what you would choose. And then sort of a smattering of things. We did get a large number on 3 of these others. 14% said change the IP address and subnet mask. 11% say restart the computer. 10% say manually move to another wireless channel. And 5% said enable 802.1x. The real problem here, the real challenge with this problem, is that we have to know what port flapping is if we're planning to solve the problem. So that's where we should start our efforts, is what in the world are you talking about? What is port flapping? That's when an interface on a switch goes up, it's active, and then it's inactive. And then it's active again, and then it's inactive. You can sit there and watch the switch and the light will turn on and turn off and turn on and turn on and turn on and turn off. We refer to that as flapping, ironically, because nothing's really flapping. There's nothing moving. There's no chickens. There's no wings. There's nothing technically flapping with this. It's just that the network is connections going up and going down and going up and going down. Now, if that's our issue, then you should automatically be thinking this is some type of physical issue, because the light on the switch doesn't turn on and turn off unless it loses signal, unless it loses that connection that it has to the device on the other end of the cable. So the first thing you should do is be thinking, is this a cable issue? Is this something we can do by replacing the cable? Will that fix it? Often it does. But of course, it might be some other type of physical problem. Maybe the cable is perfect. Maybe there's no problem with the cable. It could be the interface on the switch itself. These interfaces on switches go bad all the time. So that is one of those where, and even I would recommend that you don't move it to the port next to it, because they could be using the same chips for a group of ports on the switch. I would recommend moving it to a completely different part of the switch if you can, and what's there. So this is going up and down and up and down. Whoever's on that connection is not really able to work well at all. It's not really working much. So you replace the hardware, you replace the cables. One of those two is going to solve this problem, because that's what port flapping is. It's some type of physical level issue that is solved by replacing the physical level, replacing the cable or replacing the switch. And once you do one or both of those, you will figure out where the problem happens to be. That is port flapping. So let's now look at this and see which one of these answers could possibly solve this problem. And as I wrote the answers, I only put one that would technically solve any problems associated with this. And not to say you weren't absolutely right, but you were absolutely right. 60% of you said replace the patch cable. Of the 5 options you had here, of the following, that is the only one that is the useful troubleshooting step. In fact, the other steps aren't just not as useful, they're not useful at all. They will not help at all with this problem by design. That was the question, if that's how it's going to work. So that is why, for example, we'll step through them. 14% of you said change the IP address and subnet mask. That has nothing to do with the physical level. Having an incorrect IP address and subnet mask will not cause an interface to turn on and turn off and turn on and turn off. You may not be able to communicate over that interface, but it's not going to cause a problem with the signal. It won't cause the switch itself to disconnect you from the network. So that's not the issue. We have 10% of you that said manually move to another wireless channel. It's port flapping on a switch. There's no wireless here. So that's not our problem either. We aren't in a situation where we have some type of wireless issue or interference on a wireless channel. That's not our problem, and that won't help us. We also have 11% that said restart the computer. Restart the computer is actually a very good answer, because maybe the problem is related to software that interacts with the physical layer, and it's a bad firmware in the Ethernet card or bad firmware on the switch. Technically speaking, it could help. It could fix it technically. It's not a very common fix for something like port flapping, because the firmware that we use for our Ethernet connections, as many of you are aware, is super, super stable. It's just always works. So it would be really, really unusual for some type of firmware issue to be causing a port flapping, but it could. So we're going to say maybe, but I said which of the following be a useful troubleshooting step. the best one in this list is certainly not to restart the computer. And lastly, enable 802.1x. 802.1x is an authentication protocol. So when you're logging into the network, you use this to authenticate with your username and password, and you can't communicate on the network until you do so. That does not cause port flapping. You imagine trying to authenticate and suddenly the connection goes dead? That's not going to help you. So that's not how it works. The problem here is something related to the cabling or related to the switch. In that particular case, we would replace the patch cable. That is the answer that would be the most useful troubleshooting step. In fact, I would say really the only one you should be doing on this particular system. And 60% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. Let's get another question in here. Before we do, you'll notice that we've already gone through a lot of different topics already. We have talked about networking. We have talked about hardware troubleshooting. We've talked about cloud-based technologies. They're all in this exam and so much more. We've got operating systems, Mac OS, Linux, Windows. You've got troubleshooting of those. You got mobile devices. There's security in the mix. This is a big set of exams. And of course, I have videos for all of these. And if you count them all up, there are 137 videos in my course, over 19 hours of content. That's a lot of content to have to remember. And as much as I would hope that you could go through and remember as much of this as possible, I realize that's not always the case. So what I've done is I've created a set of notes that has every single bit of important images, important tables, important graphics, and all of the text from all of my videos. Instead of you looking at it in that tiny little screen, let's look at it on my screen. Here's the PDF version. I have not only a version that is a PDF digital version, but I also have the physical edition. Both of them are identical to each other, but obviously the one that is digital I have as a PDF right here on my screen. So all of those things you saw earlier with the, as we go through, look at all of this information, all of the images, all of the charts, everything that you would need to be able to remember what was in that video. Well, I put everything in the video in there. So even if you didn't have a chance to watch the video, now you have access to all of the information that would normally be in there. And if you get the physical edition, you get access to the digital edition for free immediately. So you can download it while you're waiting for this to be shipped to you. So that is available on my website. You can learn more about it there. Go to professormesser.com/1101notes or use the links at the top of the screen. And there are options there to get the one for the Core 1 exam, the Core 2 exam. There's a little bit of a cost break if you buy them for both the Core 1 and the Core 2 at the same time. So have a look at those. The course notes might help you, and it might be a good way to help you with your studies as you go through the videos, and you can follow along with the videos because it's all in the same format and the same structure as my entire video course. So professormesser.com/1101notes. Let's do another question. This question asks, a user authenticates to a central kiosk system by touching their phone to a sensor on the kiosk. Which of the following is used for this authentication? Is it NFC, APIPA, WPA3, SMB, or syslog? A user authenticates to a central kiosk system by touching their phone to a sensor on the kiosk. Which of the following is used for this authentication? Is it NFC, APIPA, WPA3, SMB, or syslog? It's got to be one of those, right? It's a lot of abbreviations on this exam. There's a lot of acronyms, things you need to know. Hopefully you're familiar with these. Although for this answer, I don't know that we have to know the acronym. And that's another thing I'll mention to you, is that a lot of people are very fixated on having to memorize the acronym and the words associated with the acronym. I would argue it's probably more important for you to know the acronym and then what that thing is. How does it work? How would you implement it? What type of technology is that? How would you make all of that happen? So that is a very good example of where you might want to focus more on the technology than what the words mean, because the words aren't always necessarily as important as what it is. And that's probably a good example in this question. A lot of people already locked their answers in on this one. I think we're going to do really good on this one. So let's see how you did. The question asks, a user authenticates to a central kiosk system by touching their phone to a sensor on the kiosk. Which of the following is used for this authentication? Is it NFC, API-PA, WPA3, SMB, or syslog. Let's see how you did with this one. We'll stop the poll, and we can see you guys crushed it. You did it. You did great with this one. The answer, obviously, NFC. Now, this is a very good example of how NFC, you don't even have to know what the name is. If you know that NFC is that type of networking where you take your phone and you get it very close to a sensor and it somehow does something, that's what we're talking about. That's the technology that we're hoping to find. That is referred to as near field communication, NFC. And it's a very popular communication format. It is one that is commonly used across many different platforms for doing different things. Probably the most common and probably the type of use case that is used well more than anyone else is the one that you see here. Somebody paying for something using their mobile device, using their watch, using their phone, and they're just using that to authenticate, to answer, to do whatever they happen to need to do to either authenticate or, in the case of paying for something, transferring payment system information. Now, we have a whole section in our Security Plus video that explains why using NFC instead of a credit card is much more secure. What? That's something most people don't think about, is that using a credit card is relatively insecure if you were instead going to use NFC. NFC is super secure. And so there's a lot of reasons for that. We talk about it in Security Plus, getting a little bit ahead of myself for Security Plus, but it's a very easy way to authenticate as well. You walk up to a door, it sort of replaces you having to carry around a badge. You just use your phone and it opens up the door. It's a great way to authenticate and have all of those available. That is the right answer by far. Wasn't even close. 96% of you got that one absolutely right. That is the right answer. If you are watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to send you an email that gives you a 1 hour category or 1 hour webinar category CEU. It gives you that CEU in the email. So one of the ways, or the way, that you can earn that email from me is to follow these instructions, and you must follow these instructions to earn the CEU. You go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. You click on the Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, put your name, put your email address. In the subject line, please put February 2025 Core 2 or something close to that so I know where this came from. And in the body of the message, on a line by itself, please put the super secret code words of the month: NFC, API-PA, WPA3. All three of those. I want all three of those to go into that message. And if you'd like to put anything else in the message, you're more than welcome to. I do read through every single one of them, and I enjoy doing it. It's kind of nice. Kind of breaks up the monotony of going through a bunch of these and processing them every weekend. So again, follow the instructions by going to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website and click Contact Us. Put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put a message in there that describes January 2025 Core 1. No, excuse me, it's February 2025 Core 1. No, but January. It'll be wrong. Put February. It's important to put the correct month. It's important to know what day it is, apparently. So put February in, and then in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month: NFC, API-PA, WPA3. This is the problem when you're doing a live stream and there's 27 things going on at the same time and you're sort of moving back and forth. You try to put your brain into an automatic mode. Doesn't always work very well. It's not quite as automatic sometimes as it should be. It's never as automatic as it should be. Let's do another question. We got time for one more. We could squeeze one more in. Let's do another one. This question asks, here we go. So we've got a network administrator has received a crimper from their tool bag, has retrieved a crimper from their tool bag. Which of the following would be the most likely use of this tool? Why would you use this? Would it be perform hardware diagnostics on a router interface, attach an RJ45 connector to a UTP cable, locate the end of a 50-meter cable run, identify access points using the same frequencies, or connect a network cable to a 110 block. Ooh, there's a lot there. The question again asks, a network administrator has retrieved a crimper from their tool bag. Which of the following would be the most likely use of this tool? Would it be perform hardware diagnostics on a router interface, attach an RJ45 connector to a UTP cable, locate the end of a 50-meter cable run, identify access points using the same frequencies, or connect the cable to a 110 block? You think you know the answer? Please answer by using the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to follow the link on your screen to lock in your question. And unfortunately, those of you that have answered in the chat room, you also find that nothing you put goes into the chat room anymore. Sad. Sorry about that. But that sort of helps clear things up, though. It only happens one time, and then it doesn't happen anymore. Then it kind of takes care of the issue. All goes away at that point. This is one that I think is important to know because we're dealing with physical tools very often, especially when we are working through network troubleshooting, dealing with problems of operating systems, trying to fix issues associated with security. There's all sorts of tools that we would use, both hardware tools and software tools. So I absolutely want you to be very aware of what all these tools do, how they work, and how they operate. Again, if you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Lock in your answer by going to professormesser.com/QA and answer that question. We'll have to see how things go with answering our questions on this one. I wonder that, especially here, I think it would be very good to sort of break down what all of the different options are. So hopefully you are familiar with some of these. Some of you may already use a crimper. Some in the chat room said, yeah, I use a crimper all the time. So you probably got this one and aced it pretty easily. Let's see how you did. The question asks, a network administrator has retrieved a crimper from their tool bag. Hey, buddy, what are you going to do with that crimper? Are you gonna perform hardware diagnostics on a router interface, attach an RJ45 connector to a UTP cable, locate the end of a 50-meter cable run, identify access points using the same frequencies, or connect the network cable to a 110 block? So there is our real challenge, is figuring out what we would do with this crimper. Let's see what you did. Yeah, we're not really using that for hair. How do I know this? Trust me on this one. 91% of you say the answer is to connect an RJ45 connector to a UTP cable. But is it? Because everybody else is single digit. 6% said connect a network cable to a 110 block. It's not that one. 2% of you said locate the end of a 50-meter cable run. And it's probably not that one. 1% said identify access points using the same frequencies. And last one, perform hardware diagnostics on a router interface. So in this case, 91% is a pretty big number. You've got your crimper. This is what a crimper looks like. I don't have mine sitting out, so I can't really show you the one that I have here, but I use my crimper all the time. This becomes very handy, especially if you have a connector that you need to get onto the connector itself, whether it's an RJ45 crimper, whether it's a coax crimper, whether it's an RJ11 crimper. There's a lot of different ways and connections that you need sometimes. And so you often will have a crimper. This is a good example of one that has both an RJ45 connector and an RJ11 on the same one. This has 8P, that's 8 position, and 6P, that's 6 position. That's referring specifically to the physical makeup of an RJ45 connector and RJ11 connector. Technically, RJ45 and RJ11 is what the connector is once you put the wires inside of it. Because an RJ11 connector with 4 wires inside of it is really an RJ14. So I'm already messed. First, it's DE9 or DE15, and now I'm telling you it's an RJ14. As if nothing is real anymore. We're just not sure how any of this works. But the crimper itself is doing what the name implies. This is an RJ45 connector before you crimp it. And if you look, it has these tiny little pieces of copper that are sticking up. And look at the end of the copper. Did you even realize that there is these sharp little tines down at the bottom? And they push into the connection they push into that insulation and they are able to make contact with the copper inside the wire so that you don't have to constantly strip out all of those individual ends of the wire. So whoever came up with this, thank you. Thank you for not making me pull off all of those ends of wires just to be able to do anything related to Ethernet networking. So important. And then when you're done, it's all pushed down. Notice that you don't even see those tines, but they're there. They're pushed down into the copper that's located right there. That's what the crimper does for you. That's how it works. That's why we like it. That's why it's important. And indeed, that was the answer here as well. We have a crimper that we've used for this to attach our RJ45 connector to the end of an untwisted pair cable, UTP, for untwisted pair. Now, I know we are at the top of the hour, but I have been talking so much that I think we really need to do one more question. I think we need to fit one more in there, especially since you crushed that one. Let's see if we can crush another one. Let's see if we can just do a big run on all these of all of these questions and see if you really know what all of these happen to be. Let's do this question that asks, a corporation orders new PCs with two 16 gigabyte memory modules instead of one 32 gigabyte memory module. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this configuration? Would it be faster memory bus performance, lower power usage, increase in RAM capacity, redundant memory storage, or increased SSD transfer rates? Oh, there's a lot going on there. The question again asks, a corporation orders new PCs with two 16 gigabyte memory modules instead of one 32 gigabyte module. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this configuration? Is it faster memory bus performance, lower power usage, increase in available RAM capacity, redundant memory storage, or increased SSD transfer rates? If you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. You want to instead go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. I think a number of you know this one too. I think this one, will it be 96%? I'm not going to ask any more NFC questions, apparently. We're going to see how well you do with this one. There's got to be a reason, but what's the reason? Is there really a reason, or is it a trick question? Maybe that's what it is. Maybe we just aren't sure what's going on here, and this is how this works. Let's see if you do very well on this one. I think you'll do well on this one. I think a number of you have been in the case where you've had to make this decision before, and you've had to make the right decision for the right reason. And you know the right reason. So we'll see how you do with this. Let's see how you go. This one, since a lot of you have already answered this one, we're going to see what the answer happens to be. The question again asks, a corporation orders new PCs with two 16 gigabyte memory modules instead of one 32 gigabyte module. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this configuration? Would it be faster memory bus performance, lower power usage, increase in available RAM capacity, redundant memory storage, or increased SSD data transfer rates? Let's stop our poll and see how we did. Whoop. We didn't get 96%, but we did get a majority, and a pretty strong majority. 63% of you say the answer is faster memory bus performance. 19%, that's a very good showing, say redundant memory storage. See, there's two 16s. That's redundant. Duh. 11% of you say increase in available RAM capacity. I'm doing the math. You'll have to walk me through that. And then 4% of you say increased SSD transfer rates, while 2% say lower power usage. So this is an important consideration in some cases, but not all cases. But there's got to be some reason that they're going through this process. And that's because one of the most used pathways within your computer, and in fact, one of the highest speed pathways on your motherboard, is the pathway between memory and CPU. That's because most of the conversations going on are between your memory and your CPU. Obviously, your applications won't run unless they are in memory, but your applications won't work unless you're calculating information in the CPU. And because of that, there's constant data, huge amounts of data going back and forth between the memory and the CPU. It's huge. It's one of the most important pathways or buses inside of your computer. That is your memory bus that goes between that. We often will see it measured in the millions of transfers per second. Mega transfers is what we call them, MTs per second. And you will often see this written on the memory that you're purchasing. It will say, this is a 32 gigabyte stick of DDR5 memory. It might also be written 1 by 32 gigabyte. And then it might say, and this memory runs at 5,600 million transfers per second. So it gives you a sort of a hint. And so you could start to see, because some memory runs faster than others. And you might decide to choose the memory that runs faster as long as our motherboard supports it. And that's the thing that's important with all of this. You got to get a motherboard that will support the memory that you put inside of it. But most motherboards will support different ranges of memory. And you get to choose which one you want to use on this one. That's because you now have to make a decision. And what you'll find is the faster memory, it costs a little more. It costs a lot more. And that's why. It's why it costs more, because it's faster. And faster is, what did I say? Faster is better. Faster is much better. And so we want to be able to measure out what all of these might do. Visually, if you had one process, one memory channel that would communicate between your CPU and your memory, it might look like this. The problem we have with this is there's a little memory controller within your CPU. This used to be external to your CPU. Now it's in the CPU itself. And this is really quite the powerful chip. It's able to do a lot in a very short period of time. So much that if you have two of these memory modules here, you're not able to transfer enough data to be able to keep up with how fast that CPU is going. So most of the time, the CPU is sitting here waiting for data to be transferred. There's just not enough bandwidth there. And it's what a waste of time. While it's waiting, it could be doing something. It could be going faster. So like our hideways, if we want to get more information going between point A and point B, let's now build another road. And now we have two roads. Now we have two connections. We have multiple channels for our memory bus. This multi-channel memory means that we could transfer information simultaneously across both channels and be able to act on that data much, much faster, effectively twice as fast as having a single channel. You may see this on your motherboard as being colored. You'll see different colors for the different channels. So it even prompts you that if you're going to install memory on the system, install it into the black channel first, then install them into the red channel. So this is a dual channel motherboard, and it wants you to install two memory modules at a time to get the most throughput. So that's why using two separate memory modules can often be twice as fast as a single memory module. That's an easy upgrade and an important consideration on anybody's computer. Who wants a slower computer? Nobody. So have the multi-channel configuration set up for you so that you are using the optimal communications paths on your motherboard. Sometimes it's so simple to be able to make that happen. So hopefully that will be very, very familiar to you if you start working through what works, what doesn't work, how do we focus on different speeds, how do we optimize the speeds inside of our computers. There's a lot of different things you need to know, and multi-channel memory is one of those things that becomes very, very important. Now, I know we're at the top of the hour, but let's do another. Oh, for those of you that asked the question, by the way, 19% of you said redundant memory storage. There is no such thing as redundant memory storage. We don't use redundancy in RAM. We use redundancy for our storage devices. We do not have memory that's two sticks of memory doing exactly the same thing. That doesn't work. Doesn't happen there at all. So we also have 11% that said it's an increase in RAM capacity. 16 plus 16 is 32. Sorry, no improvements there. That's not going to help us. I did the math, and it's exactly the same between both of these. We have 4% that says increased SSD transfer rates. This is your solid state drive. And where the memory modules are and how many you are using has nothing to do with the transfer rates of a completely separate component that's inside of your system. Technically, we could fight about, no, the memory, it has to go through memory if you're not using DMA. There's a whole conversation we could have, but generally speaking, doesn't help you with transfer rates of an SSD. And lastly, lower power usage. I would say that 2 memory modules uses more power than a single memory module. That doesn't necessarily have to be the case, but I would say probably most of the time it is. So that's another one of those situations where in this question with these answers, the only one that makes any sense is the one at the top, faster memory bus performance. That is the right answer. That's the one we wanted, and that would be the best choice. A lot of you were asking about why we measure it not in megahertz to be able to determine how much data is transferred with memory. Well, that's because megahertz is the number of cycles per second, number of hertz. It's the number of cycles in 1 second. Well, we don't measure memory that way because memory doesn't transfer one thing in 1 second. It's DDR, right? Dual data rate memory. It's transferring 2 pieces of information in a single clock cycle. So that's why we don't use megahertz to describe how much data we're transferring on the memory bus, because it doesn't accurately describe how much memory information we're transferring on that bus. We use one that's more accurate, which is just how much data are we moving back and forth. Ultimately, that is a much better and much more accurate way to do that. Let's now, before we finish, I want to give you one more question. This is a challenge that I found on the internet a while back, is that I was looking at practice exams for the A+, and I found that a lot of the practice exams on the internet, not so great. Some of them are actually just wrong. Some of them are very, very bad. Some are okay, but not very many of them were written with the same style or tone or approach as an actual exam would be. And if you're planning to test yourself and prepare yourself for an exam, it's important not only to know if you understand the content, but I think it might also help if you prepare yourself for the style of exam that you're going to sit for. So I thought the best way to do that would be to prepare ourselves with a series of questions that is written in a way that really does have the same look and feel as in the actual exam. But we don't want to have questions that violate the exam candidate agreement. These need to be separate exam questions. They need to be written from the approach of somebody who's writing something to help test you for the exam. And so I created one called my Practice Exams book. I have one copy right here. Here's my Practice Exams book. So this is a 389-page book. It's a big book of nothing but practice exams. And I have 3 separate practice exams in here. Each one of these practice exams is 90 questions in each exam. And each of the practice exams has 5 performance-based questions and 85 multiple choice questions. And there's 3 of those. So there's 15 total performance-based questions in this book. Let's do a question from the book. This is it right here. Same rules apply. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. This is from my book. It's on page 19 of Practice Exam A. This is question A56, and it asks, a user in the accounting department has turned on their computer and received the message, date and time not set. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this message? Let's see if you were paying attention earlier. The motherboard battery has discharged. Windows Update has rebooted the computer. Daylight saving time occurred during the weekend. Or the BIOS was just upgraded. It's got to be one of those 4, right? Now, on this exam book, I put the answers, just all the answers you would ever want to have, are on a separate page. And that page is page 31. It'll just tell you is the answer A, B, C, or D. Now, I also, because this is a PDF, you even might want to mark your answer. You think, oh, I think it's that one. Or I'm looking at this and it says, most likely, you may want to annotate this screen. If you have a dialogue, you might even want to write on the page itself. It's a PDF. You could mark it up and put anything you want into the margins or circle things or underline and try to break down what you think the answer is for this one. I also have a more detailed set of answers, and they're on page 92. As it says right here, the details are on page 92. Now, one of the challenges is that we're on page 19. And if you ever worked with a PDF, even on a tablet, you're either scrolling with your finger or you're using your mouse to get to page 92. Let's not do that. That's pointless. That wastes so much time. So in this book, these particular words are links. You'll see it turns into the little hand there. So if I click on the words, the details, it goes to page 92. Click, just fast forwards over to page 92. If I scroll down here, you'll see I'm on page 92 right there. Oh, you can't see it. My head's in the way. It's right there, 92. There we go. So here's the answer. It's a detailed answer. So it gives you the entire question and the answers again. And it tells you that the answer is A, the motherboard battery is discharged. And like many practice questions do, it tells you why that's the right answer. Now, the challenge I have when using a lot of third-party practice exams is I get questions wrong all the time. And I want to know why I got the question wrong. Not only for my own edification, but it's actually a great learning exercise to sort of finish the circle of learning there. Like, I got it wrong. Why did I get it wrong? And can we correct this next time? So there's a whole section where we should fix things. So in my book, every incorrect answer is fully documented as to why it is incorrect. So you will know when you get a question wrong, why you got a question wrong. And for those of you that already have this book, let me remind you, if you get a question right, take a couple of seconds and just read through the wrong answers to see if you really did get it wrong for the right reason. You know what I mean? So that you really understand. Also, by the way, on your exam, you might get a question about Windows Update rebooting, or you might get a question about daylight saving time, or you might get a question about BIOS upgrades. The wrong answer here might give you the right answer on your exam. So don't skip over them too much. That's right there. Now, if you've read through this question and you're thinking, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't even know what that error means. I don't know what most of these words are. I'm completely lost. I got you. Right here at the bottom is a more information link with a QR code. QR code is the same thing as the link that you see on the screen here that will take you to my video that explains this question. I wrote this question based on the contents of that video. So you can watch the video, then come back to the question. Oh, that's what it means. Okay, now I can answer. Now I understand. Now I know why the right answer is right. Now I know why the wrong answer is wrong. And because this is a PDF, to get back to where we started, which was up on page like 16, this is page 92. Well, don't worry, it's a PDF. It has a back button. Did you know your PDFs have back buttons? They do. It's right up here at the top. If I click the back button, click, we're back to where we started. I'm back to page 19. There we go. And now I can keep scrolling down and go to the next question on the list, and we can keep going through and complete our practice exams exercise. Those are my Core 1 practice exams. If you'd like to have a look at those, they are on my website at professormesser.com/core1pe. It's a great way to help you test yourself once you've gone through videos and books and some labs. Let's see if you really know what you're talking about before you walk into the exam room. It's a great way to test yourself. And it's another way that you can help support what we do here. So that's a win-win in my book. Thank you for even considering it. It's out on professormesser.com/core1pe. Well, not only can you get your hands on that, how about I give you something for free? You may not even realize that CompTIA tells you everything you need to know to pass this exam. They literally spell it out for you. It is in this document that they make available on their website. It's the CompTIA Official Exam Objectives Guideline. It's also a PDF. It's a great checklist to tell you everything you need to know about this exam. I had one of them up on my screen here. Let's see if I can pull up the core ones that I have here. I got to find it. It's got to be here somewhere, right? I've got the core 1 version of this. If you're someone who is you don't know if you're really ready to take the exam, but you really would like to test yourself before walking in, just give yourself an overview. Do I really know everything I need to really pass this exam? The exam objectives will tell you. The objectives have everything written in them. Let me put the right one up here. There we go. There's the right one. So here's the exam objectives. For example, we'll look at Section 3, Hardware. Section 3.1, explain basic cable types and their connectors, features, and purposes. You need to know network cables, such as copper cables like Cat5, Cat5e, Cat6, Cat6a, coaxial, shielded twisted pair, direct burial, unshielded twisted pair, plenum, optical, which includes fiber, and then you've got T568A and T568B. Then we can go into peripheral cables, video cables, hard drive cables, adapters, connector types. They're all here. This is a great checklist. So if you're wondering, do I know all my connectors? Do I know all my cables? Do I know what's expected of me? Go to this list. It will tell you. Everything you need to know is in the exam objectives. It is a fantastic guideline to be able to use for this. So if you are someone who is working their way towards this, it is so useful. Make sure you get your hands on this. You can find it on the CompTIA website. Go to professormesser.com/objectives for a link that will take you over there, or use your favorite search engine. Just look for CompTIA Exam Objectives. It'll take you right there. No problem. We do one of these study groups every month. We do 2 for A+, one for Core 1 and one for Core 2. We've got our Core 2 study group in 2 days. So if you like this one, come on back Thursday. We'll do this again, except with a whole new set of questions that's specifically designed for Core 2. That's on February the 6th. And of course, later this month, we have our Network Plus study group on Wednesday of next week. And a week from that day is our Security Plus study group. So there's plenty still going on in February. But if we were to look at March, our next A+ study groups are on March 11th and March 13th. Network Plus will be on March 19th, Security Plus on March 26th. But that's a long way down the road in my world. So don't worry about that so much, but show up on Thursday or come back in March if you'd like more Core 1 study groups on March the 11th. Well, we've got a lot more. Even though I'm done giving you brand new questions, I want you to give me some brand new questions. You can submit those questions at any time from that link we've been using at professormesser.com/QA. There's a link right at the top. You can click on that link and it pop a question in there that you would like me to answer in the next hour. I'll still be here. Hopefully you will be here too. We got plenty to talk about. I'm not done yet. Don't forget about our vouchers. Our discounted vouchers are available at professormesser.com/vouchers, along with our course notes, our practice exams for Core 1 and Core 2 at professormesser.com/1101success. And if you want to support us, you can do it for free by going to professormesser.com/YouTube and subscribing to our YouTube channel, or join us over on Discord, professormesser.com/Discord. And of course, we have our daily pop quiz questions on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and in your email inbox. A lot to do here. We got a plenty more to go through in the next hour or so. Looking forward to answering your questions coming up next. Don't go anywhere. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Core 1 A+ study group. Okay, one moment, please. Let me take a sip. God. Oh, so good. Oh, so much better. That's what happens when you talk so much. There's so much going on there. One moment, please. There we go. Now we get to do this. Oh, we're not done yet. There's plenty more questions and answers. I just don't write them. This is the part of the study group that I use to get questions from you. So I don't really prepare anything for this section, which will become very apparent in a moment. But I like to go through and answer questions that you submit. The way that you do that is you go back to that same link that we have been using at professormesser.com/QA, and you could submit questions for the second hour of the study group at any time. You can put them in there. In fact, you could have done it any time in the first hour too. It's always there for you to submit a question. I'm going to moderate these questions as we go through it in real time. We'll see what questions you have. I'll answer almost anything you would like to ask of me. And I get some good questions. So we will see how those questions go as we go through this list. It should be pretty good to see what questions we have available. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start going through this list. We're going to see what questions you have of me. Wow, already a good number of questions that are in this list right now. So I'm going to go ahead and start working on this. Before we do that, I want to remind you, some people in the chat room were even mentioning this, is that when you are looking at the CompTIA website, and this is an important consideration. I did mention this somewhat. If you go to the CompTIA website, here it is. I don't know who that guy is, but there he is. What's up, dude? Hey, So happy. He works in a happy place. And if we scroll down a bit for the A+, it tells you on the page, coming spring 2025, new CompTIA A+ certification, 220-1201, 220-1202 exams. The CompTIA A+ certification is being updated to ensure it remains relevant and comprehensive in today's rapidly evolving IT landscape. The new A+ 220-1201-1202 certification will cover essential skills in hardware, software, networking, and troubleshooting with an increased focus on security, networking, and software troubleshooting, preparing individuals for a wide range of IT roles. So this is what a lot of people have been sending me emails about, saying, oh, did you know? Have you heard? What's the deal? Should we stop working right now? Should we just quit and wait for that to come through? Well, those of you that are very familiar with my study groups know that the answer to that is a resounding, do not stop your studies. Do not wait to get certified. However, if you're somebody who is working right now to be certified and you're competing against other people to try to get that entry-level position in IT, or you're competing against people to move up in IT, make sure you tell those people to not study and to wait. Your competitors would love for you to wait to get certified because they're not waiting. They're getting certified right now. The important part, by the way, and I mentioned this earlier in the study group, is that the existing exam version, even if we don't even have dates, by the way, this is so vague that we don't even know exactly when it is yet. It will be soon, but we don't know when, which means we also don't know when the existing exam will be retired. But traditionally, CompTIA has always given us 6 months after the release of a new exam to finish up our studies on the existing exam. 6 months. That's a very long time in the world of certification studies. So even if let's say they release a new exam version tomorrow, obviously you don't need to wait at that point. Actually, you may even want to wait then as well. I'll explain why in a moment. Let's say they release a new exam version tomorrow. You still have 6 months. And that's why I tell people, keep studying, stick with what you got. They haven't even given us a release date yet. We have no idea what the release is going to be for this yet. We think it's coming soon, the next month or two, probably. But you still have plenty of time on the existing exam version. Also, here is the little thing they don't tell you. The new exam, you will be able to take a new exam shortly. Let's say they release it tomorrow. You could go out tomorrow and take that new exam. Now, what study materials are you going to use for that? Looking around, there's no study materials here. How about on Amazon? They on Amazon? No. What in my local bookstore? There's some study materials in my local bookstore for the new version? No, there isn't. There's not. So even if they release a new version tomorrow, there's nothing to study from. So that's why I tell people, don't rush into a new version thinking that it's shiny and new and good. It actually is not that shiny. If you look at the exam objectives, it's actually not that new in this particular version. And there's no study materials yet. Now, certainly on day one, I will have videos, there will be books, there will be a smattering of materials out there somewhere to be able to pull from. But even those will not be as comprehensive as the ones we have to choose from today. So that's why I tell people, don't be so quick to rush into a new exam version. It's actually a disadvantage to take a new exam when it is immediately released. You have much higher chance of passing your exam if you pass it with the current exam materials, because there are so many more out there. We've all taken the exam already. And by the way, these two exams, effectively the same thing. Let me give you some statistics, for example. I'll pull up the stats that I have on, let's see, you're not going to be able to see this on your side, but I will show it on my side, so I'll tell you what they are. I've already counted the differences between the current exam version. I've counted how many things are new in the new exam, and I've counted how many things have been removed from the current exam. I know exactly the differences. And here's the interesting part of this, and it's before I give you the specific statistics, let me tell you that this update to the A+ exams is very different than any other A+ update that we've ever had. Let me explain why. A few years ago, about 3 years ago or more, just over, we had this thing where the world shut down. You may recall that entire thing that we did. And everything that was underway in every line of work, in every company around the world, stopped completely. Just stopped. We stopped doing things. Yeah, we did a little bit, but we effectively, for a while there, we weren't doing much at all. We had to ramp up at that point. And to be fair, we're still sort of ramping up in many ways, even today. So what's interesting is whenever a new A+ exam is released every 3 years, there's always a new version of Windows to go into that exam, which makes the new exam very different than the old exam. There's all these new things with the new version of Windows. Think back now. What was the version of Windows that we were using when COVID hit? It's Windows 11. What's the version of Windows that we're using right now? Windows 11. Nothing has changed with Windows in that entire time. Now, they've come off of the idea that Windows 11 is always going to be here forever. They've decided they were trying to copy Apple in OS 10, and it was always going to be OS 10. They were going to do, it's always Windows 11. We'll always have Windows. Now they've realized, oh, wait, we could charge people if we went to a new version. They forgot that they were in business, and they decided, wait, we need Windows 12. And so they are working on Windows 12. They're getting there now. They're going to release Windows 12 probably this year at some point. But that's now down the road. We're already going to have a new version of this exam out in that time frame. And quite honestly, I really don't expect there to be enormous changes in Windows 12, just as there weren't enormous changes between Windows 10 and Windows 11. Regardless, here we are at the precipice of a new exam version and no new Windows version. So I looked at the stats, and normally there is about a 30 to 40% difference between exams. I did the calculations. On the 220-1201, the new Core 1 exam, the percentage of new objectives, 13%. There are a total of 49 new bullets in the new exam. It's almost the same, 13%. Not a big difference there. Well, how many things were dropped between the old exam and this exam? 58 objectives. Not a lot. So the Core 1 exam today, not very different than the Core 1 exam that will be here at the, only one that will be here at the end of the year. Not much different between the 1101 and the 1201. Very, very, very similar in those two. What about Core 2? I'm glad you asked. Core 2, you didn't, but here we are. The Core 2, the percentage of objectives on the Core 2 that are new, 18%. Still well under 30 and 40%. 122 new objectives on the 1202 exam. How much did we delete? 47 objectives. Not much is different. So the total change on the 1202, 15%. So a lot of people are in this mode where they are really driven to doing a new exam. I want to do the new one. It's new. New must be better. In this case, not only is new not better, new is really not even that different. These two exams are very, very similar to each other. Now, for someone creating content, I'm reshooting all of my videos, even though the difference is really only about less than 20%. I like to shoot them every time I do a new course for a number of different reasons. There's new technology. It looks better. It sounds better. I don't know about looks better, but it sounds better. There are certainly advantages to reshooting a lot of these, and I can make things a little better. I can change some of the things on the screen. I can add a little bit more content. We're absolutely doing that with this new version of the A+ course. But functionally, within the structure of the course itself, it's almost identical. It's remarkable how much was moved over. So this was a good opportunity for me to make the course even better because I had already written the course. All I had to update was 18%. Well, let's update some more. Let's do some more on this, which is really great. I don't even know what that means. The mic is improved. This is exactly the same mic I've been using for 18 years. It's literally the same microphone. I don't know, before I started like this and it was really bad. Then I realized the microphone needed to be close to me. And now it's so much better. Maybe that's what it was. This is one of those cases though, where I think we tend to put too much emphasis on bits and bytes of this exam, on this objective and that objective. For me, I'm sort of in that business. I have to know what objectives are different. I have to know what's been added. I have to know what's been changed because I need to make a course that is something that you're able to use. You don't have to be down at that little bits and bytes level that I am, but I think it is important just for broadly to take a step back and look at the objectives and go, oh, it's only 20% difference. Now compare this to the last Security Plus update. The total difference in objectives on that one, 50%. Half the exam was brand new on Security Plus, but for A Plus, 18%, 15%, somewhere in there. For you, this is fantastic. For anyone planning and working on their exam right now, this is a huge advantage for you for a couple of reasons. The first advantage is that you don't have to be pushed into taking a new version of the exam because quite honestly, it looks and feels like the old exam. There's not a lot of new and shiny on this newer exam. So there's not a big push to force someone down the road of taking the new exam. The other part that's good is, let's say you've decided to finish up your studies. You're working on your A+ right now. You stick with the 1101 and 1102. You're planning to take these exams by the September, October, November timeframe, which is where we think they will retire. And then life happens, which happens to us all the time. And something happens and we're just not able to get both of these exams done by the retirement date. And at the end of this year, you're thinking, I'm going to have to make a move. I'm going to have to move from the 1101, 1102 to the 1201 and 1202 because I've just run out of time and they're retiring the exam. So now I have to start all the way over. Wait a second. I don't have to start all the way over because most of the exam is identical. So there's a great upside for all of us on this one. Everybody wins on this one, which I think is great. It's the very nice silver lining that COVID has provided to us as it relates to this exam. So if you were looking for a COVID upside, I got you one. That's the worst upside ever. That's the worst reason for a global pandemic I can think of. That's all I got. That is the only upside I have. So it's very, very nice that it happened that way though. I think that's pretty useful. So keep those things in mind. I will be producing a very detailed overview of the differences in exams, just as I did for the Security Plus, just as I did for the Network Plus, so that you can reference those things. Those are articles that are on my website right now. And I'm already in the middle of creating the article for the A Plus. I just don't want to release it yet because I think it would be more confusing for people to see that before the exam is available. So that's pretty nice. When will they make these changes? We don't know. They haven't announced when they're making the changes yet. We don't know. So that's one of those situations where we just have to wait and see. Maybe next month, maybe March, maybe April. I don't know. That's my best guess. They said spring. That's springy. May technically is spring, but I don't think they're going to wait that long. I think if they did it like the old version, one moment, please. Let's go back to my first slide of the study group, or one of the first. Here it is. And let's look at this one. The release date for the current version of exam was April the 20th of 2022. I don't know if they're going to wait that long or not. I thought that's when they would release the new one, but I have some access to some things behind the scenes as a CompTIA partner. I get to see this information, but they don't tell me a lot. Being a CompTIA partner is more about me being able to provide you with discounted vouchers more than me being able to get a lot of information, because they still keep everything very close to their vest. They don't say a lot about what's going on. And what I've been here and there, what I have read has said March-ish timeframe. We will see. There is a meeting, I think, that's going on next week, and I will get, I think, a little bit more information. So at least we've got something there we can go with. But that is my overview for those of you that were asking in the live stream. Do we wait? Do we keep going? As many of you know, my mantra, my guideline to you, the thing that I always tell you, never, never, never wait to get certified. There are many and various reasons why it is important for you to get certified as quickly as possible. There's almost no downside for getting your certification as fast as you can. There are absolutely downsides to waiting. There are significant downsides to waiting. So that's why I tell you. Now, obviously, as we get close to the retirement date of the exam, as we get closer to the August timeframe, come back to the live stream. We'll talk about whether you want to wait or not. At that point, you don't have to wait, because at that point, the new version's been out for a number of months. The books have been released. It's sort of a moot point at that point. Moot, M-O-O-T, moot point. So that is why I tell you now, we don't even have dates yet. Why would you wait? I even tell people, it might not even happen. It's going to happen, but we don't know when. And since they haven't locked us down to a date publicly, I think we can pretty much guess that it's a good idea that we just keep going with our current version. And I think that's what you should do as well. So hopefully that's given you some feedback, some things that might be useful in your planning, in your studies, and the other things you're working on. Let's now go through the questions that you have for me that you have put in this mix. So there's a lot on here that a lot of you have been talking about. So let's talk about this one. This has come up quite a bit also lately because of all of these changes that are going on, but also because of reality and geography. Let me explain. From this gentleman, C Dog, has written in and said, I live in the DC area and I'm new to IT. Been studying for the A+ for the past couple months, and I've noticed most of the help desk and IT support roles around here ask for any of the trifecta certs, A+, Network+, Security+, but prefer the Security+ as an entry-level help desk. My question is, should I stop studying for the A+ and pivot to Security+? If so, is the Security+ certification harder than A+? This is an important question. I get this question many times a week, often many times a day. And the question effectively is, what do I study? Do I study A+ or do I study Security+? A lot of people have this idea in their mind that I really like security. I like the idea of working in security. The idea of IT security is exciting, so I'm going to study Security+ and go get a job with that. The problem is that IT security requires you to already have a foundational knowledge of technology that you can then build on. So entry level in security is not the same thing as entry level into a company or entry level into technology, because it often is not. Security requires you to have already a good understanding of operating systems, Linux, Windows, Mac OS, mobile operating systems. It requires you to have a very good knowledge of networking, subnetting, switching, routing, dynamic routing, how to troubleshoot all of those, how to read packet traces. This is years of knowledge that you must accumulate before you are even qualified to have an IT security position. So if we go back to C-Dog, who asked about this, C-Dog says, these jobs are asking for the Security+. What is up with that? What's up with that is Mr. C-Dog lives in the DC area. That's what's up with that. It's the District of Columbia. It is our nation's capital. It is where most of the organizations in that particular geography, that geographical area, are very focused on federal government. And the federal government has a large number of minimum requirements to work in technology for the United States federal government, especially the Department of Defense. And one of the entry-level certifications that qualifies you to work at a help desk for the government in general, but specifically the Department of Defense, but often adjuncts to Department of Defense or third parties that work for, even commercial companies that work for the Department of Defense, they will say, we want you to have a minimum of Security Plus, because that's what the government would like their people to have, and they want that same thing from our people. So that's why if you are in the Virginia, Maryland, DC area, you will find that a lot of entry-level positions require you or greatly encourage you to have the Security Plus certification, even over A Plus and Network Plus. They'll tell you, oh, we don't care about A Plus. We don't care about Network Plus. We care about Security Plus. And they care about Security Plus because of the requirements from the government. So that's why. Now, if you're in Minneapolis, if you're in Dallas, if you're in Plano, if you're in Los Angeles, if you're in Seattle, it will be different. It will be a very different set of requirements. And that's why I tell people all the time, before you lock yourself into a cert, do some market research. It's what we call it in the world of corporate America is market research. We want to study, what does the market want? What do employers want in our area? Are they asking for A plus? Are they asking for Network Plus? Are they asking for Security Plus? Are they asking for CCNA? Are they asking for an Amazon cert? Are they asking for a Linux cert? What are they asking for? And what you might find in a particular geographical area is there tends to be a bit of consensus, because the people in that area have a core set of knowledge. And so employers want to take advantage of that core set. They want those people with that core set of knowledge. And in your geographical area, it might be in LA, they might all be asking for A plus. But if you go across the country and you land in DC, everybody wants Security Plus. So it's not the same everywhere you go. It's a little bit different everywhere you go. I have a video, it's in the YouTube video description of this video, of how to get a job in IT with no experience. It's a 30-minute video. I know, it's 30 minutes. But if you've ever watched my videos, you know they're just quick. I'm not messing around in these videos. There's not a lot of dead air. I'm giving you factoid after factoid after factoid after factoid. And I give you some ideas about how you can best position yourself to get that first job in IT. And one of the things I tell you is to make a spreadsheet, find every job in your area, maybe everything within 35, 55 miles of you. Find every job that you believe you are qualified for. Like, don't do this for things you're not qualified for. Find everything that you think you would be able to do. And then see what they're asking for and document it. Put it into a spreadsheet so you can see it all at once. This company wants somebody with a 4-year degree, and they want somebody who has got a Microsoft certification, and they want an A+. And it would be nice if you knew something about this cloud technology. This company wants a 2-year degree, and they don't want any certifications. This company didn't mention any degrees, but they want an A+, a Network Plus, and a Security Plus. So you should be able to combine all of these things together and have a look at what everything comes out to be. You may find that nobody wants Security Plus. You may find that everybody wants Security Plus. But unless you compile the information, you're never going to know. The reason this is useful is, well, perhaps for obvious reasons. If you're planning to go after a particular certification, it would be nice to focus your efforts on a certification that employers would also like you to have. That's a win-win. Now, I realize sometimes you just want to go after a certification that's interesting, but these are usually tasks and efforts that take months of your life. These are big time sinks. There's a very valuable pot of gold at the end of that time sink, but it takes time to study for a certification exam. So I tell people all the time when they come to me, and here's the question they ask: what certification should I get? I don't know. Brother, what do they want? What do people want? So the question is never, what should I go get? The question should be, what do other people want me to have? That's a different question entirely. That's a different question entirely. This is one where you really do have to put the mirror back on yourself and really think about your strategy for getting that job. Because I think a lot of people stumble into the job business. They stumble into the job search as they sort of walk in the door and say, well, I guess I need a job. Let's do A+. Okay, why not? And they just sort of hope it all works out. Sometimes it does. There is skill to being lucky, I think. There's part of that. But it would be a much more strategic effort, a much more knowledgeable effort, if you were able to simply take a little bit of your time, lay out the state of your geography and what employers are looking for, and compile what you see out there. You may be surprised at some of the things that start popping up in that list, and it might even be an interesting task to describe to the person who ultimately will interview you. And they'll say, why are you looking for a job here? Well, let me tell you how I started this process. Here's what I did. And you can explain to them the very analytical process you went through to determine what the most important skills in technology are for your geography. I guarantee you the employers have not done this. None of them have. I'm just telling you. I know them. I've talked to them. I've spent time with them. They've not done the research, but you did. They will probably be more interested in what you found than you realize. They will, well, tell us what you found. We would like to hear this, because that's important to them as well. So I think there are some very important considerations that will help lead you down the pathway that is the most strategic for you for getting a job in IT. Now, do you have to do that even if you make the spreadsheet and everybody says they want an A+? Do you still have to go get an A+? You don't have to do anything. You have to pay taxes. You have to die. That's kind of it. Those are the two things. Everything else, you can do whatever you want. But we're talking about a strategy here. We're talking about your best possible chance for getting that job. That's your best possible chance for making that happen. So think about what makes the most sense. So C, as you are in your DC townhouse, you are hanging out at the Georgetown bar, and you're talking about the week, and you're trying to figure out, do I shift from A+ to Security Plus? You might want to. In DC, you might want to consider that one. That would not be a bad decision. That would not be a low effort decision. It would not be a poor statistic. You could make a move there. The analytics there are good. And I think if you did the math, you put down the spreadsheet, you analyzed what jobs were out there, and you saw what they were asking for, it may be very obvious to you. I think that one's a good move. So I rarely tell people, yeah, stop what you're doing and move over to here. But in your case, that actually might be a good decision. Might be a really good decision. So that's what I would recommend as well. See if that's something that makes sense for you, and go with that one. I think it was a good question. I think other people have a similar question depending on where they are in the country or in the world. And that same thing applies. Go make your spreadsheet. Go figure it out. Make that happen. Along those, since we're talking geography, along those same lines, let's talk to Frank. Frank says, have you heard of anyone getting an IT job internationally? Because you like to rock the microphone. I'm in Los Angeles, California. I'm willing to move to the UK. This sounds like fun. You're in LA. You want to go hang out in London. That sounds good to me. You want to go to Chelsea. You want to be part of the group over there in the UK. It's a girl, isn't it? I know Frank. You can tell me. So Frank has a beau, and she's in London. Frank would like to be in the UK and have a job in IT. Is that doable? One of the things, and I've done a lot of work in London, in Scotland, and there used to be a very well-established CompTIA effort underway in the United Kingdom. In fact, previously, this is 10, 15 years ago, the United Kingdom had a very well-established method of getting people started in the industry. There was the UK had a program where you could become an apprentice in technology, and they would place you at a company. This was great. Like many things associated with big government and big corporations, there was big corruption, and that ultimately fell apart with an enormous bang. It was just a monstrous, horrible situation. And I found that right after that, a lot of the CompTIA, a lot of the effort and the emphasis on the CompTIA certifications was soured. I think unnecessarily, but that's what happened. And so if you look at the jobs in the UK now, it is very different than what it was. In fact, I would say the A+ does not quite have the same ring to it as it once did. It still does have some pull. And again, if you look at the spreadsheets and you look at the jobs that were available in that area and you have a look at what people are asking for, you will probably still see A+, Network+, and Security+ show up, but you probably would see just as much from other types of certifications as well. One of the big challenges when you're moving to a different country, though, there's an enormous issue with immigration requirements, especially if you are working in another country, because no country wants someone else coming in and taking their IT jobs. These are jobs that the people who are part of that country, you are a citizen of that country, they're really your job. It's really your economy. And having someone else come in and take that position is not good for the overall economy of a country. Now, I'm sort of trying to take politics out of the equation here. I'm not really talking about any specific political situation anywhere. I'm talking in very broad terms, and I think that's probably true for most. Now, there are times when it might make sense if you have a specialized knowledge, if there is a particular task or thing that you can do that other people cannot, there may be something else there. And in other countries, they'll let you in if you have enough money saved up. So there may be some situations there that you can work through. It's very difficult to get a job internationally, though, because of that. So I think your small problem is figuring out what credentials do I need to qualify for a position in that country. I think your bigger problem is, how do I negotiate the legal issues associated with living and working in another country? I think there's a bigger problem there. You've probably done the math on this. You've probably done the research and talked to people and been on the Reddit and talked to websites and maybe even talked to lawyers and international folks. Maybe they can provide you. If you haven't, you should, because they can give you more of a reality check on, is this even feasible? It is a challenge, and that's a heck of a move. And you thought you can't sleep now. Wait until you got to fix that clock. When you're on LA time and you're living in London, that's going to take you a couple of weeks to figure that one out. It can be done, and there are people that do it, but you need to understand what the advantages and disadvantages are, and you need to there is a big reality check that has to take place there, because it's not easy. And we're not just talking about United States to United Kingdom. This applies no matter what country you're starting in and what country you're going to. There are always challenges with this. There have been times when I couldn't even go to another country to attend a seminar because it was business related, and I missed the cutoff to get the visa. Because some countries you can't visit unless you get permission. If you're going on business, you have to get a visa from that country. Many countries, at least here in the United States, we can go to other countries and just go in. We don't have to call ahead of time and get a visa. We just have to show up with our passport. But sometimes, and I've been in situations like this, I've needed to go visit a customer in another country and I couldn't. They would not give me a visa. And so we had to do everything over the phone, and it's just a mess. So there's a lot of concerns there. And those rules change all the time. So as soon as you figure out the landscape, they scramble everything up and it becomes much more difficult. So this can be done. It is done. It helps if you have a spouse who is it makes it easier if you have a spouse who's already a citizen of that country, but not always. So that's just another thing to think about. Then once you get there, now you got to get a job. That's a completely different problem. You can come back at that point. We can figure out the details. Let's do another question. How are we on time, by the way? How am I doing? I don't even have a clock up. I need to put a clock right in front of me. Oh, it's top of the hour. We can fit in another question, I think. I think we can make one happen. I'm holding out okay. So I'm going to put my clock up so I can see it. There we go. And let's do another question. We got more here. You guys are great with the questions, by the way. Thank you for sending these in so we can figure out the details. So I can sift through them and find out what we want to do with this. Let's do a practical question from Jimmy. Jimmy says, do you have any tips for recalling information during testing if you're running through answers and you draw a blank? Brother, that is me in every exam. I am the worst test taker. I'm a horrible, horrible test taker, but really only in the first 15 minutes. I walk in with anxiety. My trunk is full of anxiety. The boot of my car is, I open it up and I just take out a big scoop of anxiety and I take it in with me to the exam. And as I'm sitting down, they're setting it up. I always go to an exam center, by the way. That is just my personal preference. Some people love to be at home. That's their personal preference. I always go to an exam center. So I'm giving you the perspective of what I do when I take my exams. I go in the exam center and you have to check in. Here's my IDs. I sign the thing. We take all my stuff. We lock it away. They give me a piece of laminated paper. They give me a pen that won't write properly, and I swap it out and get one that does write properly. Then we walk in the room. We sit down. They always give me a pen that never works right. Always. 100% of the time. We go in. They find a place. We sit down. We start the exam. I'm reading the things on the screen, and I have no idea what those words mean. I can read them. They're English. They're in a complete sentence. They are written perfectly. The grammar is fine. But my brain is so ramped up with adrenaline and anxiety that it's difficult for me to understand what I'm reading. So it takes me a while to kind of cool down, to relax a little bit and get into the exam mode. So for that reason, I try to prevent reading through questions and not being able to think about what the answer is by addressing it before the exam starts. What do you mean before the exam starts? If you look for the CompTIA Candidate Agreement, you should Google that one. Google it. There's the exam candidate agreement. There we go. So this is the candidate agreement. This is the agreement that you must read through and agree to when you sit down in that seat in the exam center or when you sit down at home and you're ready to take the exam. Like the first 15 minutes of the exam, a timer is going off, but only for 15 minutes. And they want you to read through this whole thing and sign at the bottom. It's a big thing. And then you sign at the very bottom. So here's what most people do on the candidate agreement. Oh, here's an agreement I have to sign. Sign. And they're through it in 2.7 seconds. Now, if you don't have anxiety and you're ready to get this thing going, and can we just start already? And you're one of those people, first, rock on. Good for you. We are envious of you. But for others of us that are trying to deal with being in an unusual place and the temperature's not right and we can't read what's on the screen, this is a gift. And they don't even realize it's a gift. This is 15 minutes of me decompressing. Because what I tell people is read it. Read the candidate agreement. For purposes of this agreement, the terms defined in this section shall have meanings set forth below. 1.1, candidate information shall mean all information, really. Just read it. Take the 15 minutes and don't do anything but read. Because now we're focusing. You hereby authorize CompTIA to disclose your name, career ID, or certification number and status as having achieved or not achieved any CompTIA certification. Did not know that. What about the next one? Your CompTIA certification is based on your passing of the requisite CompTIA certification exams, your compliance with terms of agreement. I guess that's true. In order to achieve, so you're going through this process of reading the whole thing, sort of interpreting what every paragraph says, sort of understanding what they're telling you. And when you finally, after 15 minutes, get all the way down to the bottom, I'm ready to start this exam. I can read again. I can interpret things like a human. So finally, you sort of shake off the anxiety of the exam process, and you sit down and you take the exam at that point. So that's why I think it's useful to take advantage of that 15-minute period and use that for your advantage if you need it. Now, on the exam itself, if you're reading through a question and you have no idea what it's talking about, flag the question, keep going. Just ignore the question. Just flag it. Don't spend time trying, I wonder what they're trying to tell me about. Let's see if we can read between. Don't do any of that. You have a limited amount of time. You have so little time to work on this. Don't waste it trying to decipher something that you can't interpret. Flag it. There's a little mark button at the top. Mark it. There's a little checkbox. Mark that one and then come back to it. In fact, my strategy on the exam is anything I'm not 100% on, I mark it. 85% I got that one right, I'm marking it. Because then at the end of the exam, I will have this page that shows you marked 20 different questions and here's the 20 you marked. And you can quickly click a button and go right to that marked question. You can effectively go through the question again. If you didn't mark it, you were 100% on that one. You don't have to go back. But the ones you marked are now very strategic. Now let's dive into that one. Because I now see how much time I got left. Let's dive into this one and see what we can do. All right, let's pop out of it and go to the next marked question. Let's go back to the index. Let's go to that marked question. And you can strategically focus on where you felt the biggest shortcomings were on the exam and hopefully cleared a number of those up. Now, if you do have time, go through all of the questions. Sometimes you'll find one that you were 100% on actually had the word not in the question and you answered it completely wrong. So you might want to fix that. That rarely happens, but it does happen from time to time. Most of the time, once I've answered and I really feel like I got 100%, I don't touch it again. I take myself right then, my first effort towards that question, I feel like my brain got it right, even without me. So let's trust my brain on that one. Let's not second guess myself. Let's just go with what those are. So that's my recommendation. There's a couple of recommendations there for strategies on what do you do when you don't understand what a question is asking or when you can't understand what a question is asking. That's my strategies there. And it's a two-pronged, three-pronged approach, but I think both of those are a pretty good way to approach it. Let's keep going through the list. For those of you that asked, there were a couple of people that asked if you purchase a physical book, like my physical practice exams, then you get the digital versions for free and you can download them immediately. So yes, if you purchase this, I ask you for your address. I tell you that I'm going to mail it to you. We print it, we box it, we mail it. In the meantime, you've already downloaded this 5 seconds later. And now you have it. So yes, you get all the digital versions if you get the physical. Not a problem. Let's keep going through this list real quick. I know we're past the top of the hour, but we're going to keep going. Just a moment. Get at least one more in, right? We got a couple here to work through. Oh, this is some great questions, by the way. You folks are spot on with what's going on. As usual, you're just very focused on what's happening right now with certifications in the industry and what do we need to do and how does this work and et cetera, et cetera. You were spot on. How about, since we were talking about 1101, 1102 earlier, Will asks, will I continue study groups for the 1101, 1102 when the 1201, 1202 gets released? There will be some time frame when the 1201, 1202 is just released. We will continue doing 1101, 1102 live events because just because a new version of an exam comes out doesn't mean that a lot of people will be taking that exam version. And in fact, relatively few do during the beginning. So it doesn't make sense to sort of jump over there. So we tend to have 2 or 3 months before we will move completely over to the new version. Now, in this particular example, because I did the 600 series, 700, 800, 900, 1000, and 11. That's where we are now. So this is my 6th exam series that I've created training materials for. So I'm working on the 7th. This one that will be released is the 7th edition of these exam series. So I've gotten pretty good at knowing and understanding what differences there will be when a new exam has been released. This is the first time, as I mentioned earlier, that the new version comes out and very little has changed. There's not much new. There's not much that's been removed. They did streamline the A+ exams quite a bit. I think, especially with Core 1, and you can back me up on this one, Core 1 has a lot of rote memorization in it. Some of it is required. Port numbers are just going to be one of those things that you always need to memorize. But there's so many other things in there they make you memorize. Why do I need to know the details of 802.11a, 802.11b, 802.11g? We don't even use those anymore. And so one of the things you'll notice is in the newer exam version, there are a number of the rote memorization things that just aren't there anymore. Trust me, there's still plenty of rote memorization. They're not getting rid of all of it. But I think they recognize that they want the exam to be more of a realistic perspective of working on systems and networks than simply memorizing what frequencies are used by a wireless technology that nobody runs anymore. So they're not oblivious to this. They're aware. They know, and so they've updated their exam objectives along those lines. So there are minor differences between the versions, but one of the great parts is when we finally make the change from the 1101 study groups to the 1201 practice study groups, I don't know that you'll be able to notice. I don't know if you'll really be able to tell the difference. I think that's pretty much the same thing. And there will be minor differences, obviously. There will be, 54 new things that I can talk about in the new version. But I think that's a very good example of we will make the conversion and we'll just keep going with 1201. We'll only do one. We won't do both at the same time. And by the way, you have 3.5 years of 1101 and 1102 study group replays you can go through. So you have a wealth of knowledge that's on YouTube that you can go back and rewatch. And so I think that's why I tell people, don't worry so much about this particular time through. Definitely don't worry so much about this conversion between the 1101 and the 1201 and the 1102 and the 1202. It's going to be a non-issue for everyone. It's going to be relatively straightforward. It's going to be one of those rare times where you almost could study for the 1101 and go in and take the 1201 exam. Almost. I don't recommend doing that, but that's how close they are, is that they're very close to each other this time through. And that's by design. That's sort of by design and situation of the world as we know it, sort of created that and how it works. So I will continue to do the 1100 series study groups for a number of months after the new one is released, and then we will convert over. And I always mark in the title of the study group which one we are doing if there's a choice. Right now, if you were to look at the title of the study group, it's my Core 1A+ study group. Well, that's because there's only one Core 1 right now. But when both are available, you will notice the name of the study group will change to the numbers that we are covering for that particular study group. So you'll know. You'll say, oh, that's an 1101 study group. Oh, it's a 1201 study group. You'll be able to see immediately when we convert over to the new version. I always use those version numbers so that everybody knows what it happens to be. So that's where we are going. That's why you do not see any more study groups for the Security Plus 601. That's already retired. You don't see any more study groups for the Inten 008 Network Plus. That's already retired. So same thing will happen eventually for the A+. But while there are both available for that 6-month overlap period, we'll probably wait about 3 months into that overlap, and then we'll switch over. There'll be an obvious move when we make that happen. So there will be something that works along those lines, and you'll be able to tell. We will all be able to tell at that point, oh, it makes sense. We should move to the new version. Everybody's moving over to that version. The books are out. The videos are out. Everybody's comfortable with the new version. We're going with that one. And of course, as I mentioned, you still have 3 years of reruns that you can go back through if you really, really need to. I don't think you will. I think you've got it. Well, I think that is a great place to finish up. I want to thank everyone for joining us in the first hour. We always have a good time with our Q&A. We have another round of this. If you're studying for your Core 2 A+ certification, here we are on Tuesday. Come back on Thursday. 2 days from now, we've got our next live stream where we have our 220-1102 study group, our Core 2 study group. And I have all new questions for you on that one as well. We'd love for you to come back and join us there. Don't forget about the calendar. If you're watching this on a replay, we do one of these study groups every month. You can find out when the next live event is going to be by visiting our calendar at professormesser.com/calendar or on our events channel on our Discord server. That's where I'm going to be after this, is over on our Discord. If you'd like to join the community of like-minded individuals who are also working towards their CompTIA certifications, we'd love to have you stop by at professormesser.com/Discord. I want to thank everybody for joining us. We will see you next time on the Core 1 A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.